All right, YouTube, welcome back. Judester's in the house. So Jude is a proud owner of an automatic Jeep.
Not proud, but an owner.
So he said you've had this Jeep since fairly new?
I mean, 30,000 miles I had mine.
With stock tires, stock suspension?
Yeah.
And he said the parking brake barely worked then. And then he did all these modifications, big wheels and tires, and it doesn't work at all. And I think there's many Jeep owners out there with the same problem, except for ones that have electronic parking brake. You're not just going to lift the console and go in here and modify the ratchet assembly. So this is a self-adjusting assembly. The dealership said that the parking brake cable springs in the back, the return springs, were causing more problems than good. And why is that? So what happens is when you release the parking brake, ready? So we're going to apply it, and you release it, the parking brake springs are pulling this back. So if your parking brake cables underneath the car along the axle have springs on them, they're pulling the adjustment off the self-adjuster. Ready? So this. So the further that this goes forward, the less throw that you have. So ready? Get move it, Jude. I'm going to move this forward. Do it again. Sorry. Like, see how high it is? So the tighter this thing is, the clock, so you can go in here and clock the spring and put some additional tension on it. Or what I did is I started spacing the cable off, realizing that that wasn't the right way to go. So if you do that, what happens is it's taking the natural automatic tension off of this by doing that, and then you have to compensate more. So what I did is actually took a brake return spring off the parking brake, drilled a hole in here, and then drilled a hole up in here, and now it's holding it more in adjustment with the current springs in the back. So if I take the springs off the back, it'll be able to pull more forward. So now it's very consistent.
Yeah, it is really consistent.
So does that mean it's going to be better than what the factory designed? It's only going to be a little better because the parking brake shoes in the back are so small, and then the cams that they use really aren't efficient where they have a large throw, right? And then now you're fighting so many weak points. So you're fighting the pivots, the shoes, all this. There's so many moving parts that it leads to inefficiency or ineffectiveness in the parking brake system. You would think that Jeep would redesign all this crap and give the customer something that actually worked, but then you're talking about redesigning the whole rear braking system and the parking brake assembly, and they're not going to do it. I think more people were just satisfied and happy that they could tell their friends they have a Jeep and the parking brake sucks.
The whole reason I didn't fucking fix it is because when I did my axle seals, I was getting everything back together and they wouldn't work, so I just said screw this. I turned them all the way in and just threw the rotor on and said this is fine, whatever.
Right. So
it barely worked anyway. I was like, why am I gonna sit here for 30 minutes and adjust one side and then got to do the other side? Screw that. Just turn it all the way in, get the rotor on, get the caliper on with the pads, and get it
So
on.
it barely worked from new on stock wheels and tires. And then what does every Jeep owner do? They go out there and put big wheels and tires on it, and now it can't do anything when they're new. So then as it gets older and starts to wear and the cables stretch, now you have so many different issues in your parking brake system. Where do you begin? Well, I want to say you begin at the back and restore the shoes, the hardware, the adjusters, make sure the adjustment's right. If you have the springs on the cables, you can just remove the springs and leave the cables, but the cables all stretch too because you're just hammering on the parking brake system every time you're trying to get it to stop. So you're talking about rebuilding it. So we have already fixed the back parking brake. I left the springs on there just to make sure that I can get this, and then we're gonna yank it up and Jude's gonna try and push it. So remember, you're not going to parking brake slide a Jeep with this crap-ass braking system.
Especially not in auto.
Yeah, so this is pretty good. I would like to see it a little bit higher with that spring, but the more spring tension you put on here, the harder it's going to become to pull. But you can see this. As soon as the springs in the back start pulling this back, and look how easy that is. It starts pulling adjustment from it. So I have this fighting the springs in the back, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back there and we're going to probably cut the springs off.
Or at least shorten them.
Where we can just shorten them and take some of that tension off and see if that will give us a little bit more throw. But then if I get more throw forward, right, it's going to start taking tension from my spring. So I don't know what I really want to do here. I mean, this is so close to being perfect. I just want the customer to have a positive experience when they get in their car and say, wow, my parking brakes never felt this
The
good
only
and
reason-
consistent.
The only reason you're gonna struggle with this is because it's
It's a
manual.
shit design too.
Well, it's a manual too, so they have to use that to keep their car from rolling.
Yeah, I always put my car in gear, so either reverse or first.
Yeah, but gears can kill sync. If you leave it in gear, it can kill a synchro.
I'm gonna kill you with that analogy.
I know,
I'm gonna
because
killing
I've done
shit.
it before on a it's a used transmission, but still I left it in gear because I didn't have a parking brake,
Yeah.
and I completely destroyed a synchro.
All right, so let's go through this again with you guys. The ratchet self-adjusting mechanisms wear out. The cable stretches, the springs become weak. The cables in the back start to stretch. Everything underneath the rear brake starts to wear out and fall out of adjustment. So you need to actually evaluate the whole system, right? Pull the back brakes apart, restore all that to new. If you have springs on the cables in the back, remove them or leave them or overcome that spring tension. I would say if your ratchet assembly is beat, replace it. We replaced it on this one, and I thought they would improve the design. They did not. So now I'm improving design with adding a spring to this, which is going to pull this forward. And it seems very consistent now that when you go and do this, that's 3 clicks. And let's see if Jude can move the car. He probably can. So 3 clicks and Jude can barely move the car, right? So you're not looking to park and brake slide it. That's it. You're looking to just hold the car in place a little bit with this crappy ass design. But adding a shim back here, I think only added to my issues here with unwinding the spring tension here. So I could actually technically just take that little shim off that I made out of a split nut and put it on there. But since I've already overcome the adjustment problem, and you can see how easy I'm just pushing that back, right? So this is just pulling on the spring still, where this is not enough spring tension. But I think it's satisfactory, to be honest with you. As long as all your other adjustments are good, this is as best it's going to be.
It's only satisfactory if the customer thinks it's satisfactory.
And then I have a 2018 over there that has the same problem. That came from another shop. They did manual. They did the back brakes. The parking brake barely holds. I'm like, this is just a crap design. And I wonder if the factory friction material, brake shoes, has more grab than aftermarket, which is possible too. All right, guys, so there's a lot of videos out here. I would say this. I would take the return spring that they use for the parking brake shoes, drill a hole in it right here. I'll zoom in. Drill a hole in it right there. And then up underneath of here where the spring tab is underneath, it's dead center of this. There's another stop for that. Drill a hole in that. And then stretch that parking brake across, but make sure all your back brake stuff is working properly. That your adjusters move up and down. The adjusters actually pivot inside. The parking brake levers, your shoes and hardware and everything in there is not wiped out or worn out. Because as your shoes wear, it just adds to more problems with this parking brake system. This is just how flawed it is, and you need every bit of all the moving pieces to work. There's just too many moving pieces in this parking brake system to make it effective on an under-designed parking brake shoe for people that are putting monster tires on it. Thanks for watching.